Lumber prices are crazy, crazy, crazy right now. And so I think a lot of you guys have put your plans to the side for building a deer stand, but I'm going to make this video today and hopefully encourage you and give you some options to still make it happen. Hello everybody, this is Nathan Nelson with Stillwater Outdoors, and today we are talking about how to build a box blind for cheap, if not free. Now, me and my family have built well over a dozen box blinds, and we have spent maybe $2,000, upwards of $2,500 at the most on all of them. That equates to like $150 to $200 per box blind. So first things first, you need to have a plan set in place. And why this is important is because if you don't know what your design is going to be and how you're going to lay this out, you won't know how much material you need to get. If you don't know how much material you need to get, then you're going to end up spending a little bit extra time accumulating too much, or you might end up getting the wrong size of things. You really need to know what your plan is. Now you can draw up a plan yourself, or I have a tower stand plan that is available for you in the link right here. But either way, it's really important that you have a plan set in place. My next tip is that you need to salvage materials. This is a very broad topic here, so I'm going to kind of dive into a couple different ways that you can salvage materials to be able to build a deer stand. Look for telephone poles. Often you can get telephone poles for free. In fact, I was able to pick up like well over 8 poles just this last summer to build my own tower stand, and I did not have to pay a dime for any of it. I was able to get mine through a local power company, but if you are able to find one of those companies near you, there's a chance that you could get your hands on some. Another way you can acquire some materials is if you have a friend that works for a construction company. Oftentimes they're throwing out a lot of the scrap material. You don't need to have perfect materials to be able to do this. And oftentimes they even throw out some really good stuff. Now, there may be a little bit less of that now that we're in this COVID era where all the lumber prices are jacked up. But by and large, when companies go through and they start to build something and there's leftover product, they're not going to take that over to the next project. They're just going to get rid of it. So if you have a friend, they can be a huge resource for you. Another aspect of this with having a friend that works for a construction company is that sometimes they go in and they do demo work, and when they tear apart old windows out of a house, or if they go in and tear apart a deck to build a new deck, you can ask to get those materials because chances are those guys aren't going to be taking all of that with them. This leads into my next point. When you are doing your own projects around your own house, sometimes there's going to be materials that are left over. For instance, I just built my own house, and what I ended up doing was I had my whole entire house sheetrocked except for a few areas where I did some tongue and groove. And originally my plan was on the inside of my box blind, I was going to put up, what is that stuff called? OSB. But I had a bunch of sheetrock left over, and I'm like, it's just gonna go to waste. It was all this scrap pieces that I would never use in my house. But I decided to just take that out there and use it. Now, it may get a little bit of some moisture in there, and it may not be the most ideal thing to use. But the point being, I didn't have to spend several $100s buying a bunch of OSB boards just to put on the inside of a deer stand. Now, another thing that you can do is just be on the lookout for when people are renovating or doing projects. Oftentimes they're going to throw out old insulation. I have acquired some insulation from a person that just lived down the road from me. He had a bunch of it just sitting in his garage and he was never going to use it, and so I took it, and that's what I used in my tower stand. Did not have to pay a penny for it. Another area that you can save costs is by not renting big heavy equipment. When I went to do my holes for my telephone poles, I used a shovel. I dug it out. That's one of the best ways that you can save money, is not spending a lot of money on rental fees for rental equipment. Another thing that I've heard that people have done is that they go to the lumber companies, and sometimes they are selling discounted products. It could be defective products. It could be products that got returned because the color wasn't right. Oftentimes they'll have scrap sheet metal laying around that just didn't get used on a project, or something got returned, or something was messed up. So oftentimes you can get a very good discounted price on all of that stuff. Now, another thing that you can do is look at garage sales. We have found plexiglass at garage sales for dirt cheap. Now, if you ever go to buy plexiglass, that stuff is stupid expensive. So if you can get your hands on one of those for $5 or something at a garage sale, like boom, you're in the money. I also had a situation where there was a friend of mine who was renovating some of their house, and they took out a bunch of old windows. I could have gotten those windows for free if I needed them, but at that time I didn't really need them, and I didn't want to be storing them, and they weren't quite what I was looking for. But if you were in need of some windows, oftentimes you can get your hands on some pretty decent set of glass and just be able to put that right in there. Now, another thing that you can do is people are getting rid of carpet all the time. So if you can get your hands on free carpet that people are ripping out and they're going to throw it away, I mean, they will never charge anything for that stuff. In fact, they're looking to just get rid of it most of the time. So that's a great way that you can have some cost savings. Now, another unique one that a lot of people don't think about is go to your local landfill. There is so much stuff that people just throw away. You could find everything that you need to build a tower stand by what people just dump. Now, another method that you can use is to have your own trees milled up. My uncle just did this recently. He got some spruce trees cut off his property, some big ones, and he brought it over to a guy that's got a sawmill in our area, a friend of ours, and they cut the things up. I don't know how much it cost, but it was probably dirt cheap, way better than spending any sort of money that you would get buying it from a store. I have another friend who is looking to build 4 different tower stands on his property this summer, and he priced it out, and it would have costed him $6,000 with the cost of what lumber is right now. So what he did is he went and bought an Alaskan chainsaw mill, and he is going to mill up his own lumber so that he can build a tower stand. In fact, he's even going to cut off some of the sides of these boards and make like shiplap type siding for his tower stand. So there's going to be like almost zero cost to his box blinds. And on top of that, he gets a tool that he can use into the future for other different projects, so it will pay itself off so quickly. Now, one of the biggest expenses that you will have when you build a box blind is your roof. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can go around this. You can either buy shingles or buy some sort of roofing material. I've done that. In fact, I did it with my tower stand here, and that's where I ended up having most of my cost. But another option is you can just be on the lookout for some different materials that you could use. In the past, we've used some rubber roofing material that we got, and it's worked fantastic. We just tacked it on and then covered over the screw holes with tar, and we haven't had any issues with it. The other thing that I did on my tower stand is that I got soffit and fascia that was left over from my own house project. Sometimes there's house projects that are going on, and if you can get your hands on some of that old soffit and fascia, boy, you can save some money, and it'll actually button it up real nice and make it look good. This also leads into some other options. Maybe there's a house project around you and they're tearing off some old siding and they're just going to throw it away. Get your hands on that stuff. Now, when you're talking about your door, sometimes you can go to Menards and they have these discounted doors sitting in the back somewhere that maybe they got dinged up a little bit, or maybe they are just not selling, or whatever the reason might be. You can get your hands on those, and sometimes it's like $3 to $5 and you've got yourself a door. Now, another area that a lot of people end up spending money on is the paint. I had to spend a little bit of that on the paint, and that was my second biggest expense, which put me upwards of $250 to build my tower stand. So one of the things that you can do with this is, first of all, if people have old paint sitting on their shelves, which everybody does. I mean, come on. It's sitting around everywhere. I mean, obviously you don't want to paint your tower stand pink. You can find some good paint that's just sitting around. It might not be the most perfect stuff, but it'll work well for your situation, and you won't have to spend a dime to get it, because people will just be like, here, have it. Now obviously you have to have some screws and some nails and other materials to construct this tower stand. So there may have to be some investment that you make there. But there is also a lot of people that pick up scrap nails and somebody's got a bucket sitting around in their garage, and maybe you could use that. Or maybe you just go through your garage and start looking at what you actually have, and you might be surprised what you could use. Another tip that I've seen is people use old pallets to build a tower stand. Now those can sometimes be a little janky and not quite as big or as nice as what I would prefer, but that can be a great option. I guess the big thing in all of this is that you don't want to make shoddy work. You want to make this tower stand like something that's going to last you a long time, and that's not going to be a huge high maintenance thing. So like, don't go like so cheap on it that it's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But you can make a lot of different things work. If you've got boards, like let's say you've got some OSB boards that aren't long enough and you piece a few of them together. Well, instead of just leaving it like that, maybe you go along and you throw a little bit of caulk in between those seams to prevent any of the critters from getting in there, any water damage getting in there. There's things like that that you can do. I really suggest that you keep those things in consideration, because you don't want to just build something just to have it rot. This goes back to my previous point, though, about having a plan. You need to have a plan set in place so that you know how things need to work, so that you don't run into those issues with water damage or, a hole that's in this thing and critters are coming in and out of it and destroying everything that you got inside of it. So if you want a really solid plan, once again, I'll say that I've got one available that you can get. It will really get you going on a nice tower stand. So I guess if the price of lumber is what's keeping you from building that box blind that you want, maybe you need to consider some other different options. Now, I will say, this is a labor-intensive process. You're not just going to go to a store and pick up all your materials and then go out and slap it all together. You're gonna have to take some time to actually be looking for the materials that you want, or collecting them, or cutting them. There's gonna be some work that has to go into that, waiting for the lumber to dry. So this is a little bit more of a long-term solution for you to be able to build a tower stand and do it for free. But I'm telling you this, I don't think lumber prices are going down anytime soon. And so if you can get after things now and collect all the materials that you need, you can build everything that you want in next year or the year after that. And if you are really diligent, maybe you could even get it done this summer. I really hope this sparked some ideas for you. So if you guys could be sure to comment about some other ways that you have saved some money, and make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, guys.